Would you agree with Michael Lewis's characterization that the stock market is rigged? I know you've described it in the past as unfair, but there's a difference between unfair and rigged.
Yeah, I think I probably would not be quite as hyperbolic as that, but we have started actually over a year ago looking at the use of information that didn't fit into traditional categories of insider trading, but because of the presence of these algorithmic high-frequency computers, they could use information that before was really useless. And we obtained a settlement with Thomson Reuters was the best example, because we learned that in addition to releasing this information to their customers at a particular time, they gave a 2-second edge to a select group of higher-paying customers, which would have been irrelevant 10 or 15 years ago, but in the universe of high-frequency trading and multiple exchanges that are interlinked becomes a problem. They, to their credit, agreed to stop giving the 2-second edge, but we're looking at whether there is any other illegality. High-frequency trading of securities, good, produces liquidity. Front-running the market, bad.
Do you believe that there is illegality?
That's why we're conducting an investigation. We're looking into that.
Well, then, is the one at fault really the regulators, the SEC? Because the SEC has conducted a number of studies over the last few years and haven't concluded that there's any wrongdoing here. So couldn't this be a case of hate the game, not the player?
No, I think that the game has gotten very complicated. The SEC is looking at this, and I've been in touch with the SEC. Commissioner spoke up last week, I think fairly forcefully about it. They need to make moves in the change the regulatory structure. But look, we now have a situation with more than 60 private and public exchanges that are interlinked, and there are cracks in that system. And the high-frequency traders in this race for speed try to use the milliseconds of advantage they have over other traders to front-run markets and to take advantage of the cracks in the system. The SEC's got to look at some re-regulation, in my view. But I think there are other things that can be done in the meantime. The idea of putting some speed bumps in, and there are a variety of ways to do this, just to slow the process down or to take away the arms race that need to take chances for ever greater speed, which also could have a destabilizing.
But it was the SEC that created Reg NMS, so they created this system that has the cracks in it. When I look back and I look at the way specialists operated, they had way more control. They knew so much information and could control bid-ask. I mean, now it almost seems like it's more fair than it was 15 years ago.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I do think that it's important to distinguish between high-frequency trading, which is a good thing. Extra liquidity compresses the bid-ask range, and the fact that there are those folks who are trying to take advantage of things to front-run the system. If you can get information, and Michael Lewis talks about this, that someone's dumping a lot of, I think he used Microsoft as an example, and you have the ability to know that just a few seconds before people can execute the trades, not even seconds, milliseconds. The other piece of this that we have to look at is the race for speed is inherently dangerous, because that leads people to take more and more chances to try and get an advantage, and that could lead to destabilization of the markets.
Is it, though, Mr. Attorney General, you describe it as an arms race, is it by definition dangerous? And I ask this question only because in just about every other industry in America, we celebrate technological advance. We celebrate the use of technology to solve problems, to build better mousetraps, except, it would seem, in the equity capital market. Lewis himself says that from his perspective, now he's not an attorney general of the great state of New York, but he says from what he can tell it's legal.
Well, I think he's probably referring to federal law. We have a different securities law here. We're looking at it. We're not prejudging the situation, but I think your point on regulation is a little bit off, and we tend in New York to be a little bit market-centric and finance-centric. We celebrate technology, but we have speed limits and airbags. I mean, we celebrate technology, but we have systems so that you can cancel your credit card if it's stolen. So there are ways to have checks and balances, and what is being proposed is in the way of speed bumps, and this is something, a new conversation. I support this idea of frequent batch auctions. So you would have all the trades that are up for 1 second or 1/2 second, and then it's allocated by price, not who got in a few milliseconds before the other at a lower price. That's one way to do it. There's another way with this this new exchange that was featured in the 60 Minutes program, IEX. They have their own way of putting in a speed bump. This is a conversation that's just beginning, but I think it's very important both to prevent front running and to ensure that the markets are safe. Look, the problem here is, and I'm a fan of the markets, but I think Michael is right. We've lost a lot of credibility. A lot of investors do not have confidence in the markets, and it's up to those of us who believe in them, who enforce the law and regulate them, to restore that confidence.
I want to bring in Sal Arnuk. He's a partner, co-founder, and co-head of equity trading at Themis Trading. First of all, I'm going to let you put your tap shoes on and do the I told you so dance. How are you feeling? I mean, you've been making this claim, ringing this bell for 3 years.
Yeah, we've been talking about these issues probably since 2005 to 2007 when Reg NMS was implemented. So it's nice to see a storyteller like Michael Lewis take such a complicated topic and bring it down for mom and dad to understand in 12 minutes at home.
But is he bringing it down for mom and dad too much? I mean, for me, I struggle with the claim the stock market is rigged. Why today is it so much more rigged than when we had specialists 15 years ago? I mean, when Goldman Sachs paid $9 billion to buy Spearlead Kellogg's specialist unit, those guys were crushing it, killing it. Didn't they have a special advantageous position in the market?
And you are not alone in being concerned with this word rigged. If you were watching Twitter as the show was airing, there was quite a bit of outrage among those invested in the status quo about that very term.
What's a better word then?
I don't.
A fairer word.
I don't care what the word is. Whether you want to call it rigged, skimmed, extracted, extrapolated, taken away. The bottom line is, and here's the best part. This is not a book. We read the book. We got an advance copy of the book.
Oh, did you?
Oh, we were co-located. We spoke with Michael Lewis at length during his writing process of this book. It is not, once people read the book, it is not an indictment and all about vilifying high-frequency trading. It's about this complex, crazy system of enablers that are set up with all these conflicted interests to cater to this one class of traders above everyone else.
Hang on for just one moment. Michael Lewis made the point in his interview on 60 Minutes, and I'm sure goes into length about it in the book, that the problem is the system, right? The problem isn't necessarily that there are people taking advantage of the system. The problem is that it's like every system, right? It's got problems. There is no perfect system. And so well-capitalized, wealthy traders, in this case high-frequency traders, will prey upon those opportunities in capital markets.
Like they've done for hundreds of years.
Exactly, they've done for hundreds of years.
And I agree. And high-frequency trading is neither good, it's not bad. They're not doing God's work. They're not providing liquidity to everyone out of the goodness of their heart. In good times, they'll be there and give you your penny spread in Bank of America for 100 shares. And in bad times, well, you know, different things and unpredictable things happen in bad times. It's not about high-frequency trading. It is about this system. And the system is set up to insert the maximum number of intermediaries between natural buyers and natural sellers.
But when we say the stock market is rigged, the finger gets pointed at the institutions, at the market makers, at the banks. When we say no one has confidence in the banking system, less people have money in the equity markets because they don't trust it. But who shouldn't they trust? The regulators? Or when I look at Morgan Stanley's Speedway system, do I think it's questionable? I think it's within the rules. And what banks have done all this time is figure out what the rules are and push the envelope. That's an arbitrage opportunity.
Great. And I agree. And this system is set up. The big banks and the dark pools have an incentive to get the maximum number of participants and volume in their pool for profits so that they can advertise. The high-frequency traders want to get in those pools and have moved substantially off the exchanges or in concert with their activity on the exchanges because everyone wants to touch the order. You guys said this earlier. Everyone wants to touch the juice. They wanted to touch the juice back when Goldman bought Spear Leads. They wanted to touch the juice in 1982. They want to touch the juice now. But this system is set up to perfectly and efficiently and in an automated way make sure they touch every bit of juice.
So here's the devil's advocate question, and you know these are coming, Sal. If, in fact, the system is designed to facilitate, as you say, the maximum number of intermediaries, why is it cheaper to trade today than it was 15 years ago?
Why is it cheaper to trade?
Because if you'd think that if there were more intermediaries, they'd all be skimming and it would be more expensive to trade.
From whose perspective? All right.
Well, that is the
Everyone
question.
talks about the retail investor as mom and pop, you know, buying 100 shares of Bank of America 4 times a year through their Ameritrade account. Mom and pop traded for $8 a share in 1998 on Ameritrade, right? It's not about that retail investor. It's about the vast majority of retail investors that are in pension funds, that are in T. Rowe Price, Capital Group, Brandis, Janus, you name it, all these big guys. And when they have to buy 1 million shares and it goes into a broker or bank-sponsored algorithm that splits up that order into thousands of pieces throughout the day, and at every single point, those little, we call them child orders, those child orders, they touch everybody, and everyone wants to touch those child orders because they're predictable, they're slow, they signal. So is trading cheaper? Is looking at the spread a suitable concept to judge trading and whether it's cheaper? And I question that.
Do you believe IEX are the crusaders for honesty and the right way and the truth that Michael Lewis does? I mean, they've got Virtue as one of their biggest customers, and Virtue's the biggest HFT guy out there.
And that tells you that it's not about HFT. Let me tell you a little bit about these guys. All right.
These guys meaning IEX.
Meaning Brad, Ronan, Donald Bolerman. We worked with Donald Bolerman and Instinet, and Instinet has, with the first, the pioneers of electronic broker, first ECN. They have such a wonderful group of alum who've made it to be CEOs of exchanges and are very prominent in the industry. I am most proud of Donald Bolerman and what he's done because I remember him as a kid at Instinet. Brad and Ronan, when they came to our office when they were laying out their vision and how they were planning to adopt a free market solution, how awesome is that, right, to an issue that's been suffocating the marketplace, we were, once we got past Ronan's F-bombs, we were floored because they are trustworthy. Their integrity's there, and you come away liking them, and you come away saying, these guys have a profit motive, but they're going to create a clean system which invites all types of players in on a level playing field. We've been a supporter, and we were among the first brokers to sign up. Our clients enjoy, we don't trade on our behalf, our own behalf, our clients enjoy large fills, meaty fills, without the typical reversion and all the other issues and the little latency arbs and all these built-in...
Well, why do you think Goldman changed their tune? For the first 7 months of IEX, Goldman wanted nothing to do with them. I don't know, the timing to me seems a little bit questionable. A week before this claim comes out, a week before Michael Lewis's book, they could potentially paint Goldman in their dark pool in a very negative light. They get in bed with IEX. Doesn't that seem weird?
It does seem weird. However, once you read Flash, and I'm not inside Goldman's engine and Goldman.
No, just from your perspective.
But from my perspective, when you read Flash Boys, this is not something that happened a week ago or 2 weeks ago. They got on board well over a year ago. And there was a change. The two gentlemen there who are really in charge of capital markets really get and are buying in that the market first and foremost has to take care of the owners of the market, the long-term investors, above the renters.
So if there's a market-based solution and it's IEX, is there anything to complain about anymore?
I'm feeling pretty good, and I'll tell you why. When we first started our crusade and speaking about all these issues, the unwanted touching in alleyways.
No one likes unwanted touching. I promised you that. It has nothing to do with capital markets.
Unwanted touching. I need to go. When we've been talking about all these issues, I remember the first time we went down to the SEC to talk about them, and I came back so jazzed. I felt like, wow, this is, we're going to Washington. Mr. Smith goes to Washington. We're going to see change, and then Washington happened, and so we became quite jaded. So first of all, things have been coming in the free markets that are very positive for long-term investors. All these Heim-Bodek order types, the hide-not slideys, things, those have been being addressed. IEX free market solution, we're feeling pretty good.
Author Michael Lewis's broadside on high-frequency traders has everyone on Wall Street and Main Street talking. He told 60 Minutes on Sunday night that the system is rigged against normal investors because high-frequency traders know what they're doing before they do it. So I want to get reaction from someone who truly knows this issue well. He's Keith Ross, the former CEO of GetGo, a high-frequency trading firm, but now he runs PDQ Enterprises, which describes itself as a way for investors to trade without having to worry about high-frequency traders. He's with us now from Chicago this morning. Keith, welcome. It sounds like the mission statement for your new business really is almost an attack on where you came from.
I'm sorry, Stephanie, I couldn't quite hear your question.
Explain to me exactly where you work now and how this connects to GetGo, where you came from.
Well, when I was at GetGo from 2000 to 2005, the very, very early days of high-frequency trading. We were a very small company and thrilled to find a way to make some money in the marketplace as the market was becoming more electronic. From there I went to PDQ. PDQ is an ATS, very similar to IEX, and we have a different market structure, which what we do is we pause the order that's coming into us and we make the algorithms compete to fill the order. So it kind of turns the high-frequency tables on their head, so to speak.
Keith, why don't you tell us what you think of, Stephanie described Michael Lewis's book as a broadside against high-frequency trading, dark pools, equity market structure. Do you think he's got it right? Is the market rigged?
I think that's a rather hyperbolic phrase to help book sales.
Well, it's working.
I know it's working really well, and I tip my hat. I did read Michael's book yesterday. I spent my morning on it. It's an interesting book. It's got 3 different sections, really. Only one is about IEX and high-frequency trading. And the issue that I have is that it doesn't really make a deep dive into the marketplace. He doesn't talk to other high-frequency players. He doesn't talk to other ATSs. He portrays the story of IEX, which is an interesting story. He's an excellent writer, but it's only a partial picture of what's going on in the marketplace.
Keith, if PDQ or IEX or other speed bump like services, let's call them that slow the trading down, were truly the answer, wouldn't you guys own the market now? But you don't. PDQ's not that big. IEX, okay, it's only 5 months old, but it's not that big. It's not getting that much business.
Well, we've grown. We were up over 100% last year in our business. We're very pleased with that. We are telling our story. It's an education process. The market is so fixated with speed. When we come along and say that we have a different process, people say, that's interesting, but how fast are you? So we actually recreate the floor process. So I think the easy way to tell the story is that back in the day, a good broker would go to the post and ask the specialist, what is the market? And then he would get a response and could gather information. That doesn't exist in the marketplace except through a PDQ-like mechanism or possibly IEX. So we are introducing that. This is part of the innovation in the marketplace that the current regulatory rules have allowed.
Then are you bummed that Michael basically picked IEX to quote-unquote partner with here? Because the fallout of the success of Michael's book could be huge success for IEX. You're not getting that benefit.
Well, it'll give IEX a lot of exposure. As a market structure person, it's not clear to me that that is the solution. So the customers will vote with their orders when the time comes. And like any startup, they're going through the startup phase. PDQ went through that, but we're now successful and profitable. And it's just a question of the market becoming educated. I mean, I retired from high-frequency trading 8 or 9 years ago, and it's now considered to be a new business. So the education cycle in Wall Street can be pretty long. And I mean, Michael writes a very entertaining book, but his knowledge of the market structure is nowhere near the common understanding of baseball when he wrote Moneyball and some of his other books.
Well, then do you think it's almost laughable if this business has been in existence for 8 years, Michael Lewis comes out with his book Sunday night at midnight. How about the timing? Here we are, April Fool's Day, April 1st. Now the FBI is doing an investigation. Don't they look like chumps? They needed Michael Lewis to take them to the water?
The high-frequency guys look like chumps? Is that the question? It's a little hard for me to hear.
The FBI.
Well, they have to do what they have to do to protect the system, and I would be surprised if there's anything obvious. My experience has been most of the market manipulation issues have actually come from people, not from algorithms. And the algorithms are trying so hard to make an efficient market that their biggest concern is competing with other algorithms, and they will focus on trying to keep their head above water because it's so competitive. I mean, one of the things that Michael's book misses is the dramatic decrease in the cost of execution over the last 10 years and the dramatic efficiencies in the marketplace. I mean, maybe that's not a fun thing to talk about. It's not as exciting as understanding the characters that formed IEX and their experience during 9/11. But it's an important part of the equation if you're going to take on high-frequency folks. Yes,
Keith, would it be better then if we just tweaked or maybe overhauled the market structure, got rid of flash orders, phantom orders, got rid of maker-taker, got rid of these rebates that promote, what appears to be healthy but liquidity, but people have all kinds of issues with?
Well, it's interesting because when you heard the pundits yesterday talking, first of all, everyone admits that it is cheaper and better and more efficient, and then they go to pick, some of the issues that you've talked about. I'm very comfortable that if the regulators, particularly the SEC, looks into the problem and analyzes the data and comes up with a solution, that will be a step forward. I'm rather concerned that if the politicians get involved and they think they need to solve the problem, that's probably not going to be beneficial for the markets. There was an excellent quote in Michael's book. He said something to this effect, that all of the current loopholes were created by regulations that were formed to try and plug a former loophole. So you just need to be incredibly careful as you start to tweak things. I think maker-taker is very misunderstood. It's actually a way of rewarding people for posting their orders. When Reg NMS was introduced, the thought was everyone would want to post their orders and the display market would be bigger.
Michael Lewis's latest book, Flash Boys, sets its sights on the world of high-frequency trading, that complex, arcane practice only performed by the most sophisticated investors armed with the most powerful computers. Except actually it isn't all that complex at all. In fact, it was a major plot point of Superman 3. Remember Superman 3? It's the crappy one with Richard Pryor. In it, Pryor's character engages in a little fiduciary malfeasance commonly known as salami slicing.
How did you do that? I don't know. I just did it.
Here's how it works. An employee's paycheck is always rounded down to the nearest whole cent, which of course raises the question, where do all those fractional cents go? What Pryor's character does is take all of those little fractional cents left over from each transaction and deposit them into his own secret account. In each case, the individual theft is very small, but in the aggregate, it nets him a ton of cash. Now, in many ways, this is a lot like what high-frequency traders do. They buy stocks just before other people do, and then resell them at a small increase, pocketing the tiny profit. Like Pryor's paycheck scheme, each transaction is so microscopic that no individual would ever notice or care what was going on. But over thousands or millions of trades, it really begins to add up. All you need is a very high-speed data connection and a computer. Just like Richard Pryor.
I am a genius.